What's up, guys? It's Shrimp Po Boy and this fucking mouse. Anyway, since you guys not seen my 3-video series calling out the problems with thermal efficiency and busting the first mechanic myth, and the other 2 videos calling out the second biggest mechanical engineering fucking myth in all history, which is a prime example of taking a half-truth and pulling a contextomy fallacy to it to make it the half-truth and then spinning a lie out of it. Who started it? Why? It's hard to say. I won't go into conspiratorial speculation, but anyhow, since you guys have the attention span equivalents to a meth-tripping screwy squirrel, if you don't know that cartoon, goddamn, your childhood's sadder than mine. And apparently, my videos, my scripted content's apparently drier than some of your mother's sand traps. Let's see if we can fix that today, including finishing this roasting of you, because it's kind of asked for. Let's see if I can condense this down into one video and see if you can pay attention to that for long enough for it to count. Let's see. Now that's over with, and some of you are gonna fucking not like that. Too bad. Sew your manginas up and don't use them. Learn to grow some skin. It's called a roasting for a reason. Now, busting the auto mechanic live 14.7 to 1 air to fuel ratio. 14 and 7/10 parts air to every 1 part fuel is not hard to do. Do you want to actually know this? How to bust this myth? Because those of you who want to know this, stick around. Those of you who don't, you can leave now. Those of you who want to stick around, check this out. How do I measure how many parts air to every 1 part fuel that I would burn up in an hour? Okay? There are 2 ways of doing this. The first is more simplified, with a very simplified equation that I'll give. This was provided by George Wiseman initially, and I swapped certain symbols out to get the point home. More in your face. And the second one requires a bit more rigor and more tools. And if you got a carbureted vehicle and you want to computerize, you want at least half-ass computerize the carburetor, I will teach you how to do that at the end. Or actually, no, I won't. I'll separate that into its own video. Now, how to make a carbureted engine adopt a scan gauge. But anyways. Before you go any further into doing either version of this math figure, you're going to need these things. 1, you need the engine displacement, usually in cubic inches or liters. And you can convert one to the other if you need to. 2, the engine's RPM. You can use 50 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour, or 55 or 65. It doesn't matter. I would leave the 5 out. But I'm going to use the first formula that's going to go operate at 60 miles per hour. 2. That's number 2. 3. You will need the miles per gallon at highway speeds. 50 miles an hour if you can do that as an ideal, since it'll make the math much easier. People using metric will need to convert. I have not done a metric example yet, nor had George Wiseman or Alan Wallace when they pioneered this shit, and Wiseman improved upon it. 4. Get a scan gauge, an OBD2 scan gauge, in other words, or a tachometer. Ideally, as far as I'm concerned, both. I would say get both. 5. Get the intake air temp, which is what that means, IAT. Get those temp readings. Now for method number 1. Let's take the example of a 350 cubic inch engine running at 2,000 RPM at 70. Say you figured out how you got 70% volumetric efficiency. This is how much air actually gets into the cylinders. How efficient it works as a pump. How at the volumes it pumps. How efficiently it does. So 7/10 of the chamber will be filled in this case. Currently getting 20 miles per gallon at 60 miles per hour. You two behave. Hey! So, remember, with a 4-stroke engine, the air is sucked in to the cylinders once every 2 revolutions. So, you divide your RPM by 2, and you get that number. So you cut them. So this will be 1,000 intake suctions. The engine RPM for the engine would basically pump 350. This is how you figure this out. 350 times 0.7. That product you multiply by 1,000. Then that result by 60. You divide that by 12, that result by 12, and then that result by 12 one last time, and you get, and then you round the fractions away, you will get, this you say 8,507 cubic feet in air per hour. And mechanics, a mechanics instructor told George that an engine is mainly an air pump. Then you multiply that 8,507 by 0.0807, since a cubic foot of air is exactly 807 thousandths of a pound. That will get you, in rounding the fractions away, that will get you 687 pounds of air pumped per hour. There's your air. So there you go. 20 miles per gallon, 2,000 RPM at 60 miles per hour, it will use 3 gallons of gasoline in an hour. Gasoline weighs at a range of 6.073 to 6.3 pounds. Keep it simplified, but and allow wiggle room for more rigor by assuming the heaviest weight, which is 3 times 6.3 means 18.9. Using the above givens, the engine is using, based on dividing the air pounds per hour by the fuel pounds per hour, that equals every 1 part fuel will use 36.35 parts air. And that's under load, not idling. The fuel mixtures vary from rich to lean all the time. I know that. So, so where does this come from? I'll tell you. The half truth about 14.71 is, it is technically true, but what makes it a half truth is the lack of context. You need the gas at the ambient pressure and densities in the outdoor environment, and you fully vaporize gasoline into a complete gas state. You don't atomize into a mist, you vaporize into a gas form. And those who fucking swap the two, atomizing and vaporizing and treating them as the same are pulling a pseudosemantic at best and anti-semantic retardedness at worst. So, they're incorrect. So, at the ambient, like in the open environment, and gasoline is fully, or petrol is fully vaporized into a complete gas form. You need 14 7/10 parts air to 1 part of that vapor form in the open air to burn, to fully, completely burn, to combust. This above example, to give you a note, the above example was with a carburetor. The electronic fuel injection has the potential to be much more efficient than a carburetor, but the potential is not being actively used, and it's an overcomplicated solution to easy to fix problems in carburetors overall. And this is a bitch carburetor. This is not using any of the other stuff. It's pretty easy to get 350 to go up to 30 miles a gallon without any hybrid tech. It is definitely possible to get 200 miles per gallon with no loss of power performance. Doing that last one cost George Wiseman and his brother over $16,000. Years of DIY research, trial and error experiments written down into multiple fields and branching into multiple fields. And out of the box, multidisciplinary, eclecticism, extremist, scientific thinking, genuine scientific thinking, which I find I could be good at when push comes to shove, but the economics to doing that particular over 200 miles per gallon trick is not within my grasp. And if I did, it's a bit of a pain in the ass, to say the very least. So, good luck with that. Now, if you want to do method number 2, fine. Let's get on with it, shall we? Firstly, the engine displacement. Like I said, the usually in cubic inches or liters, again, 2 and 3. You'll want the engine's RPM at the speed you choose. 3, you need the miles per gallon highway speeds. If you can do 50 without being screeched at and honked at like crazy, good. So there you go. You can absolutely do that. Modern technology has made it possible to calculate actual AFR for most vehicles that have an OBD2 port. So get yourself an OBD2 reader like the fucking scan gauge, please. No excuses. A scan gauge will simultaneously tell you these abbreviations. What are they? Revolutions per minute, or RPM. Gallons per hour. MAP, and before it was co-opted by the queer theorists. And I'm not going into that right now because this is not political content. It's not a political video. It's not a philosophy video either. And IAT. And intake air temp, as I said before. So, MAP in the proper context is manifold absolute pressure in PSI for the air intake. I already said what IAT meant, and I said gallons per hour already. Make sure your scan gauge miles per hour matches your vehicle speedometer at either 50 or 60 or 70. If it doesn't, you can calibrate the scan gauge, and you also will want to check the GPS if need be, if you got one. Make sure the 3 are completely in sync with each other if you do this. You also need to set your engine displacement to run a few tanks of fuel through your vehicle so you can calibrate your scan gauge so its estimated fuel usage and your actual fuel use match. Okay? So, Then when that's set, then set the scan gauge for the RPM. For RPM, GPH, MAP, and IAT, and then go for a drive on flat roads, or a flat road that's pretty straightforward with no wind. Or keep it going if you can. Or hopefully you've got big turns and all that. If you're holding a steady speed, I forgot to delete that from the notes I got this from George Wiseman's work, so I'm sorry I didn't correct that in real time. But sorry I corrected it in real time, but still. Once you are holding a steady speed, simultaneously record the RPM, GPH, MAP, and IAT. Here's a website and phone number to the scan gauge, to buy yourself a scan gauge. And it's beautiful. Now, what you do next is number 5. Get your local weather report, or sorry, weather station reports. And you can probably access it online, because you need this to calculate volumetric efficiency. You need this, and you need to know the pressures. You need the ambient temperature, density, and pressures. Okay. 6. Before calculating your actual FR, you'll need to know your engine's volumetric efficiency at the testing condition. This will allow us to calculate the volumetric efficiency and to calculate how the air mass for the AFR. So here I go with this. So any volumetric efficiency is a measurement of how much air mass actually gets pumped into the cylinders compared to theoretical air mass the engine could pump or displace. Any engine has a set volume that can be calculated. Most engines will not generally get the full air mass available because restrictions like the throttle plate lower the intake manifold absolute pressure, thus mass of the air being sucked in. You can go to budget boosting and max boosting YouTube channels, okay, to see how to remedy that and still make the air intake box look factory built from overhead. I recommend some fine mesh wire layered onto steel grating, placing below the then opened air intake box so that no debris can get into the engine by tearing through the air filter. I advocate that one. I'm telling you to do it if you follow those DIY tips. Forced induction will make the volumetric efficiency much higher in an engine, and often can be exceptions to this rule. Here's an example of volumetric efficiency calculator. What the fuck? I don't know what the hell that was for. Calculator, if you want to, I don't know why that word calendar was there. I did not edit the script worth a damn like I should. Not nearly as good as I should have. That I'm copying in my notes from to give you this stuff, to show you as I say it. You will need to get the engine RPM, cubic inches or liters of engine displacement, air intake temperature, whether Fahrenheit or Celsius, get the manifold absolute pressure in either grams per second or pounds per minute, the number of cylinders your engine uses, and the pressure of the intake, whether the kilopascals or inches mercury, vacuum pressure, or suction, inches in mercury. And use these on the ATG volumetric efficiency calculator. You can also convert hectopascal to kilopascal to do this as well. And there's the website to the calculator. Okay? 7. Convert the scan gauge readings. Whoops. My bad. Let me fix that. Sorry. Didn't want to make that a mess. Okay? Convert the scan gauge readings to the same scales as the local weather measurements and the measurements you need here for the ATGtraining.com volumetric efficiency calculator. It's very easy to use. I've done it multiple times myself. I've used it. I mean, the calculator. It's very simple to use. Put the numbers in the right places where it shows you, and you just push the calculate button, and it just goes. It's gorgeous. I've also included some conversion calculator links to help out. Convert MAP to PSI. Convert Fahrenheit to Celsius. Okay. Calculate ambient air density using temperature, barometric pressure, which is hectopascal, kilopascal, or millibar, and humidity percentage. And convert kilograms per cubic meter to pound per cubic foot. There you go. There's all those. Here's all these calculators I linked you to. They all still function since I last checked. Now, to use an example, to get the math using, for example, George Wiseman's late wife's 2008 Chevy Aveo 5 or whatever, with a 5-speed manual, electronic fuel injection, and E-Tech 2 engines of 1.6 liters. That's how many cubic inches. With dual overhead cams and 14 poppet valves. Let's say we get, and then you'll see some familiarity of the pattern. So we get the ATG calculator results for the Aveo 5, and the result was 60% or 0.6 volumetric efficiency. We multiply the cubic inches by that number. The same thing I did the first equation. To get the actual air volume sucked. Man, Wes, there's a lot of sucking going on. Damn. My honker comes and goes anymore. So we divide, again, the RPM at the speed of choice. I think it was, I don't know, that George Wiseman went with. I think it was 60 miles an hour, I think. By air, the actual by 2, because you know every other stroke is an air intake suction stroke. You know, air intake stroke. Sorry, my Discord was blaring. Sorry about that. If you didn't know, I have a private server. I don't have a public Discord. I have a private server. So there you go. You got the 1,315 strokes suctions per minute. 10. We multiply the actual air displacement by, 58.58 by 1,315. You get 77,032 and 7/10 cubic inches of air per minute. That's what I meant to say, 77,032.7. And what you do is multiply that by 60, and that's how many cubic inches per hour. So you divide that again by 12, divide that resulting number by 12, then divide that number by 12 one last time to get 2,674 and 3/4 cubic feet per hour. 3/4 if you don't want me using quarters because you're fucking word snobs. We multiply that by 0.796. That was the local ambient density of cubic feet of air at the time George Wiseman made this example for us to follow. So that's 212.91 pounds of air per hour. So then you multiply the gallon per hour by 6.3. The maximum weight of a U.S. gallon of gasoline, you get 10.69 honk honk gallons of fuel per hour. 15. Then you divide the 10.69. You divide the pounds of air to by pounds of fuel, and this is the air-fuel ratio you'll get in practice by pounds. 19.92 to 1 actual AFR. And this also includes rounding the numbers. If you want to get the full numbers, you can use a calculator, do this on a computer, and you can put the fractions on this. I rounded the fractions out. This is not putting all the damn fractions in. This is rounding the fractions out. And it's still pretty damn rigorous. And this is how you do it. See, the number is 19.92. That's how many parts air you use in an hour with this specific car engine in these specific conditions in the weather. To every, one, and just put the colon mark and number 1 behind that number. 19.92 is to show that's how many parts air to every single 1 part gasoline. In this example, you would use in pounds per hour. So 14.7 to 1 in a car engine or any internal combustion engine is a damn lie. Auto mechanics need to fucking quit it. Now I'm done. Adios.